Hi all, I'd like to do a series on opening systems, not for complete overviews of an opening, but particular systems that you could use in your own games against main line openings. So I want to kick it off by looking at the Morra Smith Gambit against the Sicilian defence. So if you're white and you play e4 and the opponent plays the Sicilian defence, you might want a good system against this, which doesn't require you to learn tons and tons of theory. So you want something easy to play, aggressive, and will score you points in your club matches if you play for an over-the-board club or online. It will put the opponent under a lot of pressure. So I recommend you try the Morra Smith Gambit. So d4, so black takes the first pawn, and now you play c3. It's a logical move, because now if black takes on c3, let's have a look at this first. Then you play knight takes c3, and you've opened some of the lines in the position. So the c and d files are potentially, pressure points, so you can get at, black's position, and you've got fast development. The knight's automatically developed with that last pawn capture. So let's just give an example of how you could play your pieces in a sort of a setup to pressurize the opponent. So you can put your bishop on f4 here, and your other bishop on c4, and castle. And now, with this system, I would recommend putting your queen on e2 if you have this kind of position, and this allows your rook to go to d1. So say knight c6, then rook d1. Now say a6, then rook ac1. So for the pawn, you've got all your pieces developed, your rooks are connected, and on these two squares, c and d squares, so there's a lot of pressure on the black position, and potentially you're also threatening now e5, exploiting the pin on the black queen. So I won't take it further than that, just to say that this is a really nice setup to aim for with very fast development. Let's go back though and see, if black had tried to decline the gambit, this after c3, say black plays d3, how would you play this? So create a new variation. I would recommend you can take it, or you can play c4. The problem with taking it, maybe black can lash out with d5. You might not like that, but this, so you can also play just c4 here, and you have a kind of bind on the d5 square. So you're discouraging black from playing d5. So you can take the d pawn at leisure. So for example, say this occurred. And now maybe you can deploy your knight to e2, so you'll leave your f pawn available to go to f4. So you might want to stop the pin with bishop g4, so you might want to play h3 first, or just go right ahead and play f4. So f4 might be annoying because of knight g4. So say h3, f4, and you've got again a pleasant position. So this is the gambit which has been declined in this case. So let's go back. So you've played e4 and the opponent's played Sicilian, and you want to play d4, the start of the Morra Smith Gambit. If the opponent doesn't take, then you've got an easy game. Say he plays d6, you play d takes c5 perhaps, and now if black plays check, then knight c3, queen takes c5. Here you've got very fast development and a good position again. You can just continue with bishop a3, quite a logical move. And here, maybe even queen d5. So Ribka's suggestion, queen d5. If black wants to bring the queen out, it's subject to you winning lots of tempo. So queen d5 here, and this would be quite a pleasant position. Maybe here continue with castle queenside. So that's not great for black, nice advantage for white. So let's go back. So you've played d4, so say they take and you play c3, so they either try and decline the gambit or they accept it. And if they accept it, let's review that nice piece setup that you could aim towards. So you can develop your queen's bishop to f4 and your king's bishop to c4, and just aim to put your rooks on c1 and d1. So it's an easy to play system. And you've got some threats like e5 here. So let's give maybe an example game to finish off this video. We'll find the game that Michael Adams, one of the UK's leading grandmasters, played the Morra Smith Gambit in one of the British Championships. Adams kicked off with e4, and his opponent opponent, William Watson, played c5, so Adams used the Morra Smith Gambit, so d4 followed by c3, and William Watson, he accepted the gambit, and now Adams deployed his other knight and deployed the bishop to c4, and actually, because of knight ge7, he actually used bishop g5. I know I'd recommended bishop f4, but the bishop can also come usefully to g5 to provoke perhaps a weakness with f6, and here actually Watson did play f6, and the bishop now retreats to e3. Notice also it's eyeing these dark squares, so if black ever plays a6, this b6 square in particular might be a positional plan that you could use in your own games to try and get a knight there or get pressure there, as we'll see from this game demonstration. So after knight g6, Adams castled. After bishop e7, now Adams deploys his queen to e2, which was part of the recommended setup, if you remember. And so next, if the rooks come to c and d1, we have that kind of pressure set up on black's position. So after a6, Adams first exploits this finesse that b6 is under pressure. He plays the move knight a4, so a nice positional move. And if b5, then bishop b6 will win the black queen. So Watson played queen c7, and now knight b6, so clamping down on black's queenside counterplay with b5. And now Adams plays rook ac1. After castles, rook fd1. He has a very pleasant position, and one which there isn't too much opening for e from, but definitely white's doing well here. So Watson now blundered. He played f5, but it was a very difficult position to play anyway. After e takes, rook takes f5. The problem with this is exposed now by Adams' next move. He plays queen d3, and with this he not only threatens queen takes f5, exploiting that pin on the e6 pawn, but also the d7 pawn is under fire. So Adams is regaining his pawn. So after king h8, knight takes d7, bishop takes, queen takes. He's regained his pawn with a big positional advantage. The queen's come off, and after knight f8, Adams plays rook d2. So black's still under great pressure here. And notice there's a threat in some variations of bishop takes a6 because of this pressure on the c file on that knight. So Adams has protected his b pawn in preparation for that. After bishop b4, rook e2, black played rook d8, and now after a3, bishop c5, now we see this bishop takes a6, so exploiting that c file pressure. So Watson is going now a pawn down. After bishop takes, rook takes, he took on a6, allowing Adams rook takes c6. So black is the one who's a pawn down now, and the gambit has worked like a treat. After rook b5, Adams played b4, and now black played a5, and Adams took on a5, and after rook takes a5, played g3. He has a positional plan of putting more pressure with his rooks on black's position, and he does this with first rook c8 and now bringing the other rook to b3. So there's a threat of rook b8. After king f7, rook b7 check. Black played knight d7, nothing else. If king g6, rook takes f8. And now a very nice move by Adams, knight e5 check. And with this Watson resigned. Let's find out why. Rook takes e5, rook takes d7, king f6, rook f8, and in this position rook f7 is picking up a lot more material now with both rooks on the 7th, about to mow down black's pawns. So that's why after this knight e5 Watson resigned. From the perspective of the opening, this concrete game example shows some other ideas not mentioned in the basic setup to aim for, namely that you can also deploy your bishop to g5 to try and provoke a weakness. So Adams, after provoking that weakness, actually moved his bishop back to e3 instead of f4, because maybe e5 is useful for black. But on e3 it had a positional idea of clamping down on black's b6 square. So that was a great positional idea that Adams used here with knight a4, with the immediate threat of bishop b5 checkmating the black queen. So we saw black really under great pressure and losing the pawn back straight away because of this attempt to gain some counterplay with f5. So queen d3 threatened queen takes f5. Adams regained his pawn with advantage and now even found himself a pawn up, with black's position crumbling and the white rooks coordinating. against the black king. After knight e5, that was it. So I hope you might consider this Morra Smith Gambit system in your own games, and please let me know how you get on. Thanks very much.